Y'all sound so dry. I'm gonna fix that. Y'all sound dry. We're gonna fix it. So, do me a favor. If you love Chicago, make some noise. If you love Chicago, make some noise real quick. I guess it's just up here. I said if you love Chicago, make some noise. If you love Chicago. Awesome. Do me a favor. Somebody say, oh. Say yeah. Awesome. As you may know, we lost a giant 3 days ago. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. If y'all can just make some noise for him for an astronomical legacy he left. And I think it's up to us to finish his mission. Right on? Right on?
Hey,
right on. So I got this amazing song. It's called Make It Through. What is it called? And it's supposed to keep on pushing you to rise to the occasion. Right on. We turning up all 2026. Let's do this together. Come on, let's go. You're living in Chicago, God is in your favor. I'ma hold it down like call me an anchor. Think about my problems, deal with it later. Focus on my family and stack up all this paper. I am an emperor, God in the making. Every time I wake up, it's a celebration. Every time I wake up, it's starting from the day. I'm just trying to get it right. We're trying to get some sleep at night. We're trying to get some peace of mind. We're holding on this peace of mind. Come on, trying to make it through. We don't know what we're gonna do, but I know if you know you're gonna make it to 2027, put your hand up. Come on, somebody say that we gonna make it. Hey, we gonna make it. I believe in every single one of y'all. Let me tell you something real quick. Check this out. It's $3.99 just to be kind. It's $3.99 just to show love. It might just cost a little just to show up. But we gon' need each other when we go out. And we gon' need each other like a big toe. Brother grab a paddle, it's a big boat. And we coming in like a big show. We do it for the city like we need love. I'm just trying to get it right. We're trying to get some sleep at night. We're trying to get some peace of mind. We're holding on this. Come on, nah. Tryna make it through. We don't know what we're gonna do. If you're not gonna let nobody stop you from achieving your goals, put your hand up. Come on, somebody. Come on, let's go. Hey, we gon' make it. We gon' make it. We gon' make it. Come on, you got it. 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 Yeah. Come on, nah. We gon' make it through. I don't believe some of y'all. Y'all gotta show me something. If you know you're gonna take over 2026, I need this side to repeat after me. Say this. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Let me hear this side. Let me hear if you know you're gonna make it through. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh yeah. If you really believe it, put your hands on it one last time. Come on. Say, oh yeah. Say, oh. Hold this real quick. I need some help. Somebody help me out. Come on. Say, way down the road. Go. Na. Say, way down the road. Y'all doing a good job. Say one last time. Say oh yeah. Say oh yeah. If y'all don't make some noise, I might throw a chair. Y'all better make some noise for yourself. Y'all did an astronomical. Every single one of y'all gonna make it through to 2027. Make some noise for yourself. Awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Zion Ali. What's my name? Awesome, I'm a youth empowerment artist. I perform at schools, nonprofits, and political events to uplift youth through music. Please turn up with me. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, ZionAli, ZionAli. Y'all better make some noise for Rainbow Push. Let's get it.
He was right.
Before we start, we'd like to find Sean Brown. Does anyone know where he was? He was right there. Sean, come to the table. Okay. Welcome to the Women's Senate Forum, sponsored by Promote the Vote Alliance. I'm Jan Schwartz, the chair of the Alliance. Our 16 nonprofit organizations that co-sponsored this event are listed right there. We are honored to be here today at Rainbow Push, to have an opportunity to be part of Reverend Jesse Jackson's legacy. Reverend Jackson's leadership in the civil rights movement was transformational. His charisma, his character, his values, and his ability to bring people together in the name of justice changed the world. His fight for voting rights is far from over. We must all carry on his work. There is no equality if everyone does not have the right to vote. Our vote is our voice. For decades, Reverend Jackson's voice brought the fight for equality and justice to the forefront, and it made us all better in significant ways. I would like us all to stand for a moment of silence in his memory. Okay, thank you. As we grieve the loss of Reverend Jackson, we are standing on his shoulders. Right now, it is imperative to do the work by voting. We can either vote by mail, participate in early voting in the general Illinois primary, or vote on Election Day on March 17th. So much is at stake if we are to keep our rights and maintain democracy. Our first step is to be informed. We need to know the views of the candidates and what they care about before voting. Thank you all for being here today. I am grateful for the candidates who came here so we can learn the steps they would take to protect our rights and help us thrive as a nation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our fantastic moderator, Simone Alicet. She is the executive producer of CityCast Chicago, a daily news podcast that gives a smart and delightful way to connect with the city we share. She's a graduate of Northwest University and began as a reporter with the Sun-Times. She has co-hosted several podcasts here and in Seattle, her hometown. We are thrilled she has returned to the Windy City. Let's give her a hand again and get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our candidates. Thank you so much to everyone for being here, and thank you again to Rainbow Push for hosting us. I know we have a lot of candidates and we have a lot to say, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure we get our full hour here, and I'm going to go through the format with everyone. What we're going to do is we're going to do opening statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to give an opening statement. I have a few questions. Each of you is going to answer every question. You get 1 minute to answer that question. And then at the end, we're going to do closing statements, 2 minutes. I have a timekeeper right here in the front. So I see her, you can see her, you know how much time you have left. There's going to be a bell when your time runs out. And please wrap up your thought when you hear that bell so we can make sure we can hear from every candidate. Sound good? All right. With that, let's start with opening statements. I'm going to start here with you, our candidate, Sean Brown, and we're going to just go down the line. So, Sean, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean Brown. I'm born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I'm a husband. I'm an attorney. Got 2 small girls with my wife, Jessica. We live in Orland Park right now, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the reason I got in this race. Dick Durbin announced his retirement towards late March, early April, and I started to see candidates come out of the woodworks announcing their campaigns. And when I took a look at the candidates that were running, I said, these people already have leadership powers. And I'm not happy with the state of affairs that we're in today, both personally as well as as a state and as a country. And I said, in order for things to change, we don't need another politician. We need somebody with real-world experience that understands how to get things done. The power of a senator only comes by reaching across the aisle and having a majority vote so that we can actually get bills passed. So I'm not here to talk about rhetoric. I'm here to talk about the plans that I have for a brighter future. Those plans include a realistic way to get universal health care, free higher public education, provide safer communities, as well as immigration reform. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking for your vote in March. My name is Sean Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Brian Maxwell.
Is this one on too? Okay, cool.
I think they're all on, so you will have to share a little.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out today. And thank you for bringing up the energy in this forum. The energy, this is way higher energy than the last forum we just left, so I appreciate that. My name is Brian Maxwell. I'm an agriculture engineer, environmental scientist down at the University of Illinois down in Urbana-Champaign, where I'm also a community organizer. I wanted to start off by echoing what the intro just said about, recognizing the loss I think a lot of us are feeling this week, losing Reverend Jesse Jackson, who is just such a monumental figure. People all around the world are mourning him, who was not just a leader on civil rights in America, but just fighter for human rights all around the world, really a global impact. And the world doesn't produce many men like Jesse Jackson. He was a man that was not afraid to speak truth to power and have hard conversations, even when the establishment fought him on it. And to be honest, that's a lot of the reasons I got into this race. I think that our party's refusing to have hard conversations, and it keeps leading us to this points where we're under another Trump administration. What I saw in the 2024 election really shook me. It shook my faith that the Democratic Party was going to do the right thing and make the right decision. I marched and joined millions of Americans in the streets protesting in 2024. I saw and joined one of the hundreds of student encampments around the country in 2024 with a very specific policy demand. Let's stop funding the genocide with our tax dollars again. Let's stop going into another endless war overseas. And the administration, our party, still hasn't moved on from that. And I think our Democratic Party is in an identity crisis. I think we're trying to be two things at once, and we need to make a decision. We're either the party of the working poor and working families, or we're the party of the billionaire corporate class. We cannot be both. We're either the party of human rights, or we're the party of endless war and genocide. We need to make a choice, and that's why I'm in this race right now.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out here. I know everyone's got busy days, and we appreciate you guys spending some time and hearing from all of us. So, my name is Steve Botsford. I grew up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I played football at Notre Dame, then went to work on Capitol Hill for Congressman Tony Cardenas. When I was there, two things. One, I saw how Washington worked and how it was broken, but I also developed a passion for public policy and how you can make people's lives better at scale. So I eventually went on to get a master's in economics from Georgetown and a master's in finance from Northwestern. Shout out Cats. And so my campaign is solely focused on affordability. It is too expensive to live in America, but let alone mainly Illinois. And we need to make sure that our government does something about it. I feel too often the politicians in Washington, they don't feel it, so they don't care. So that's something I'm focused on, my economics background. So we got things we need to do. We need to make housing more affordable by building more of it where people want to live. We need to make healthcare more affordable by training more doctors, breaking up hospital monopolies, and reforming pharmacy benefit managers. We need to make raising a child more affordable with a child tax credit, paid family leave. And we need to make everyday life more affordable. We need to repeal Trump's tariffs. We need to invest and quicker permit more green energy. We need to do some wonky things like repeal the Jones Act. But if I'm your next senator, I will be focused one thing, and it's affordability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jonathan Dean.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's really, I actually have to say, it's really quite surreal to be here this weekend of really any weekend in light of the loss of Reverend Jackson this week. I remember as a kid seeing Reverend Jackson on TV, seeing him speak, and seeing just how charismatic, and there was not another orator like him. He was such an inspiration. And it's my wish that and my hope that we can all find peace in our grief, but also resolve to carry on the work that Reverend Jackson started. I'm running for U.S. Senate quite simply because I'm scared for my kids' futures. My background is I've been a litigator for 13 years. More recently, I founded a solar energy company, and we're developing solar energy projects right here in Northern Illinois. And I've also been a longtime activist, a political activist, an environmental activist, and an activist for survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And I also share that I myself am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And I share that to say this. I've been fighting bullies, abusers, gaslighters just in court and in my everyday life for a lot of my adult life. And I didn't move through all of that adversity just to live and raise my kids under a government that is constantly lying and gaslighting us. I've had enough. I think that the Democratic Party needs to undertake big economic and democratic reform projects in order to preserve the idea of America for our children's generation. And that is why I'm in this race, to talk about what I think those are. I think these are generational projects: nullifying Citizens United, changing the economic structure of this country, passing democratic reforms. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Kevin Ryan. There should be a mic, too, if you don't have one. I would use the mic. Yeah.
Okay. That seems really loud.
It does to us, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Kevin Ryan. I am a public school teacher, Marine Corps veteran, used to using my outdoor voice inside. And I am running... Okay. Is this better? That is better. There we go. Well done. I'm also a New Deal Democrat from a new generation running to make our government work for all of us. I am running for the United States Senate because our democracy has reached a critical point of failure with the re-election of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not the result of our popular will. He is the result of a broken political system that values money above all else. And the failures of the Democratic Party to prevent him from coming back must be addressed. And I believe the most important thing is for our officials to show up. And that's why I'm here this morning. That's why I'm the only candidate in this race that has campaigned in all 102 counties. I show up. Earlier this week, I spoke in Peoria, Illinois, to a group of 1,000 people honoring Senator Durbin. This morning, we were in Moraine Valley with a smaller group of people, and now I'm here today. Because it doesn't matter the size of the group, it doesn't matter how far it is, I believe showing up is what matters. I show up, I focus on voters, not donors, because I am trying to walk the walk on campaign finance reform. If we want our democracy to work for us, we need to take money out of politics by amending the Constitution. We need to elect people who focus on voters, not donors. We need to stop electing people who campaign on taking money out of politics while putting as much money into their own campaigns as humanly possible. It's time for the Democratic Party to walk the walk on the moral issue of our time, and that is returning our democracy to the people, to the voters, and not the 1%, the ultra-wealthy, and the oligarchs who choose to say who is a qualified candidate or not.
Thank you so much. Dr. Pamela Denise Long.
Good morning. Thank you, Rainbow Push and League of Women Voters, for hosting this important conversation. My name is Dr. Pamela Denise Long. I'm coming to you from Louisville, Illinois, which is downstate near the St. Louis area. The issues and concerns of Chicagoans are as important to me as are those for downstaters like myself. I am a former Newsweek contributor. I've been a policy analyst and commentator on media, Fox News, Hill TV, the Black News Channel, now Griot Politics, and the like. I've been talking about what Americans First policy looks like for years. I've also been calling my party, the Republican Party, to remember where we came from, to remember how we earned our name, the GOP, the grand or gallant old party. While everyone seems to be obsessed with Donald Trump, both Democrats whose ads keep talking about him, as well as Republicans who are trying to ride his coattail into office, I've been focused on solving real problems. So what I've promised to Illinoisans is that within 90 days of being sworn into office, I will present 2 bills, the Heirs Property Protection Act and the Family Land and Home Equity Protection Act, to disrupt the ways in which Illinoisans and people across the country are losing their wealth to predatory practices. I want you to be able to pass down what you've built, what you and your grandparents have built. A Valor Launch Act so that veterans can transition more smoothly from in-service to home, to keep their homes together and take the skills and leadership that they learned in service to bring back to the community. I'm fighting to make sure that we have balance, leadership, and courage in Washington, D.C. that truly solves problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, I'm going to ask a few specific policy-specific questions. Each person will answer every question. You have 1 minute to answer, and I'm going to not do the same order every time, so we can have a shuffle of things. The place I want to start is something I think is top of mind for pretty much every voter in Illinois, and that is affordability. Everything is expensive right now, groceries and housing, but I really want to focus on those in our state who have the least. People on SNAP, people on Medicaid, who may face even larger barriers to getting those. How will your platform help those people specifically? And Brian, I want to start with you this time. So you have 1 minute.
So my priorities for addressing affordability are streamlining the process for building more affordable housing, but also making more investments in the affordable housing. It's not just enough to streamline the process for building them. We need to build more affordable housing. And also finally passing Medicare for all. We're the richest country in the world. We're the only country without universal health care, and I think that's a joke. But when we talk about affordability, I think we don't focus on 2 main things that are the problem with our economy in this country. One, that over half of our federal tax dollars go towards military spending overseas, and those federal tax dollars don't come back to our local communities. So our local and state property taxes often have to pick up for the things that our federal government's not paying for. Second, the top 1% in this country own as much wealth as the bottom 50%. Until they start paying their fair share in taxes, at least what the rest of us pay, we're not really going to have the resources to be able to do a lot of these programs that address affordability issues.
Steve Botsford.
So firstly, on SNAP and Medicaid, one of the things that the Trump administration is trying to do is they're trying to add work requirements to receive SNAP and Medicaid. And the reason they're doing this is not because they care about whether or not people work. What they're doing is they're trying to raise the administrative burden on these programs so more people fall through the cracks, and it's harder to apply for these, it's harder to be accepted. So one of the main things is standing up against the Trump administration. SNAP and Medicaid should be easy to sign up for, easy to get. We need to make sure that money is going to people and they're not just spending so much time doing paperwork. When it comes to affordability, I've mentioned that's the number one thing. So in addition to the SNAP and Medicaid defense against the Trump administration, housing's too expensive. We just need to make way more of it. I'm an economist. If we increase the supply, the price is going to come down. So we need to make more where people want to live. I would like to tie transit funding to the communities that are actually building more housing instead of just talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Yeah, so I think there's both short-term things that we need to do and long-term things that we need to do. I mean, for the short term, we need to repeal the work requirements for SNAP and Medicaid. I agree that we need to make these programs easier to access for the people who need them, and we need to expand these social safety net programs so that more people are eligible for them. In the long term, we've been living under an economic structure that prioritizes the top 1% over all the rest of us. We've been told that if we redistribute more money to wealthy people and corporations with this trickle-down economics, then it will magically then trickle down to the rest of us. And I always ask people on the campaign trail, what wealthy corporations and individuals have trickled down their wealth to you? And so I've never had anybody give me an answer to that. And so we need to refocus our economy on the 99% of us who need prioritizing. That's more of a long-term thing. Short-term, I would do the things that I said earlier.
Thank you.
So I call myself a New Deal Democrat because I believe the government is the answer. And if we want our government to work for us instead of the 1%, then we have to insulate our government from the influence of the 1%. The 1% uses their wealth to ensure that subsidies go to corporations instead of us. Walmart, for example, offsets the cost of labor by relying on the earned income tax credit as opposed to giving their employees a livable wage. So how about instead of needing to provide people SNAP benefits, we ensure that people are making a living wage? I believe we don't just need to raise the minimum wage, we need to peg it to inflation and local cost of living so that people don't have to rely on government benefits and that corporations are paying their employees. We as taxpayers shouldn't be the ones subsidizing their labor. But if we want these things to happen, again, we must insulate our government from their tremendous wealth that they pour into our elections.
Thank you. Denise?
One of the things we have to address is waste, fraud, and abuse. That's both in terms of how government has funded foreign wars, foreign aid, as well as the ways people who are here have been using the social safety net and charging government for services that they are not rendering. That simply has to be done to save money, to make sure that the social safety net for Americans and those who truly need it is available. We have to also, from an affordability perspective, repurpose some of the existing infrastructure that we have that is both unused and underutilized. For example, we have schools that are beautiful buildings that have 43 students in them. What are the ways in which we can be conscientious about environmental impact, but also make sure that people have affordable housing? We need to tighten the labor market. If we want to have a livable wage, we had 10 to 20 million illegal aliens come into the nation, and we've known since the 2008 Civil Rights Report that mass illegal immigration has a negative impact on wages. We need to address that.
Thank you. Healthcare, obviously, also a huge concern among voters. Oh, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I knew that was going to happen. Thank you for calling me out on that. Sean, please.
Thank you. I'll be brief. So when it comes to the issue of affordability, that's a big ticket item, right? Right? So in order to attack the big ticket items, we got to address the big ticket issues because immigration reform, safer communities, universal health care or the lack of health care that we have right now, those are not mutually exclusive issues. They're all tied together to the affordability issue. So what we have to do is we have to attack plans, take plans of action to address each of those issues. My number one plan of action as it concerns health care, Universal Care Plus Act. It's a plan that I've already prepared, ready to put on the table on day one. No deductibles, no premiums, mental health care included. We've also got to attack having safer communities. As a former prosecutor, day in and day out, my responsibility was keeping our communities safe. I'll do that if elected as senator.
Thank you. Well, spoiler from our next question. we want to talk about healthcare, but because this is a women's issues forum, I want to zero in specifically on reproductive healthcare. You know, Illinois is the most traveled to state for abortions by pregnant persons outside of Illinois. What is your position on access to reproductive healthcare? Steve, I'd like to start with you this time.
I am strongly pro-choice. A woman's decision on her health care belongs between her and her doctor, not some politician that wants to get in the way. I think the number one thing we need to do is we need to codify Roe v. Wade and make it federal legislation, so it doesn't matter which state or which zip code you live in, that you have the same access to health care in that situation. So that's on the federal issue. That's to make sure everyone gets the same. Obviously, as a state, I think we still should protect and provide for out-of-state residents that want to come here to have that health care right when they don't have it at their home state.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm strongly pro-choice. I think women should be able to make every private decision that they need to make without interference from the government or with other people. I also think that there is a really troubling trend in America right now where there is a small minority of people who think that they can impose their religious beliefs on the rest of us, even putting aside established science and medicine. And that is something that Democrats need to forcefully push back on, and promoting the primacy of science and medical decision-making over what some minority of people's faith says. These are conversations that my wife and I have, in that we have 2 small kids, maybe a third, I guess we'll see. But these are conversations that we have privately in our home, and that I feel strongly that nobody should be determining what my wife should be deciding in regards to these decisions.
Thank you. Kevin.
Well, like the justices in the majority opinion in Dobbs, I consider Roe v. Wade settled law. And that's what they testified as, that Roe v. Wade is settled law. And then they overruled that. They lied to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They lied during the confirmation hearings, and they overruled Roe v. Wade. So yes, we need federal protections for women to access reproductive care in every state and territory in the country. But more importantly, we need a mechanism to hold accountable nominees who become justices on the Supreme Court who lie during their confirmation hearings, get into the Supreme Court, and then overrule a decision that they said they considered settled law.
Thank you. Denise.
I am absolutely pro-life, and one of the things that I notice is billboards about abortion being self-care are promoted in Black communities, not in others. The number one recipient of abortions happens to be Black women. That's not unintentional. I want to make sure that Black women have access to quality health care, whether they are mothers or not. I want to make sure that services aren't pushed upon them, that in fact their mental health and well-being, as well as their ability to have children in the future. I want to redesign health care so that it is affordable, so that subsidies go to Americans instead of companies. I want to make sure that you have health insurance, health savings accounts, and medical savings accounts, so that if you don't use those funds, your heirs can inherit that money, or you can use it for retirement. I want to make sure overall that your health and well-being, including mental health, is provided for so that we can thrive and not just survive.
Thank you. Sean.
Reproductive health care is health care. Civil rights is equal rights. I don't want the government telling me what I can do when I go to the hospital over the type of treatment that I receive. And I don't want the government telling anybody else what they can do over what type of treatment they receive when they go to the hospital. So I'm pro-choice, woman's body, woman's right, no government interference.
Thank you. Brian.
Yeah, so I absolutely support a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. In a country that doesn't guarantee you access to health care and has some of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, the government should have no decision-making in the medical choices you do with your body. That's a deeply personal choice. And I also support federal legislation to codify this. And to do that, we're going to need to end the filibuster, which is something you might hear me bring up a lot today. We need to be ending the filibuster. The filibuster, since it was created, was used to block civil rights in this country. Since it was created, it's been used that way. And it's continuing to do that today. It's blocking civil rights decisions on voting rights. It's being used to strip away women's reproductive rights. And we can't keep leaving decisions, really important decisions like reproductive health care, voting rights, civil rights, up to mostly an unelected group of 9 judges in this country who serve lifetime appointments. We need to take back that power in Congress and end the filibuster.
Thank you. Another issue that may affect women disproportionately, particularly married women. I want to talk about proposals in Congress right now that require photo ID, proof of citizenship in order to vote, prohibiting universal vote by mail, ranked choice voting. It is shown that these would impact, like I said, married women, but also people of color, low-income voters. If you were elected to Senate, what would your position be on voting access and voter suppression? Jonathan, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you very much. I've been very outspoken against the SAVE Act, and if you follow me on social media, you'll see that. We need to acknowledge that there is a movement, largely, if not entirely, composed of Republicans in this country to use American institutions in order to consolidate their own political power. And we need to also state strongly that that is wrong. Voting is a right that we all have, and outwardly suppressing it, as was done during or before the Civil Rights era, or implicitly suppressing it by just making it harder for certain populations of people to vote, is wrong. We need to be a lot more forceful in talking about that. We also need to do common sense things to get more people involved in the political process, like making Election Day a federal holiday, potentially even looking at compulsory voting like other countries have.
Thank you. Kevin.
Thank you. Of course, I think most of the Democrats up here are all going to agree that the SAVE Act is just trying to suppress voters, and we must not allow that, and none of us are going to support that. We need to support voter access. I also support making Election Day a federal holiday and enrolling people to vote and to making sure that they know their rights and how to vote. But to me, the most important voting right is that of choice. And we, quite frankly, don't have real choice in our democracy right now. Because of gerrymandering and the incumbency advantage, when you go to vote for your state rep or your state senator, in both the general and primary election, you have a 50% chance you're only going to see one name. That's not a democracy. Half of our legislature in Illinois was elected without facing opponents in the general or primary election. There's no choice. This is why we need to reform our democracy through ranked choice voting, nonpartisan open primaries, campaign spending limits, and most importantly, publicly financed campaigns. So people like the very people in this room can run for office without having to know someone who's independently wealthy or be independently wealthy themselves.
Thank you. Denise.
I absolutely support voter integrity. If our elections are not reliable, what do we have in terms of a constitutional republic? I believe that we need to make sure that voter integrity returns voting rights to every age-eligible individual. I am a proponent of people who are incarcerated being able to vote. I think that nothing about your having been convicted of a crime makes you any less of a citizen, and as a matter of fact, I would think that you are uniquely positioned to have thoughts upon laws. I am also regrettable about the fact that the Voting Rights Act has been gutted. I would like to see that reversed in any ways that we can. What I don't want to happen is for people who are not U.S. citizens or people who are new here, visitors here, to actually override the voice of the people who built this nation. Black Americans are now the third largest body politic because of mass immigration, because of the amnesty of 1986. We need to be aware that our voting rights happened in the 15th Amendment and the 19th Amendment.
Thank you. Sean.
I support the Freedom to Vote Act. I also support the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act. Individuals cannot have their right to vote suppressed. Now, a lot of people may have a different address on their ID card and live somewhere else. If we put in laws that say, hey, your actual address has to match your address on your ID, that person can't vote, what are we doing? Voting is a right. It's not something that you can do or maybe want to do. It's an absolute right, and that right under the Constitution doesn't say it has to be regulated. So I support being able to vote without restrictions.
Thank you. Brian.
Yes, I support codifying voting rights at the federal level. I grew up in North Carolina. I saw firsthand what Republicans under Tom Tillis in North Carolina tried to do. The minute that the Supreme Court was rolling back the Voting Rights Act, Republicans immediately tried to pass racist voter ID laws, specifically designed to disenfranchise black voters in our state. So we need to be passing laws at the federal level to protect these rights. And as I just mentioned, we need to be passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that was previously promised by the Biden-Harris administration, and we need to be actually following through with that. But to do that, we have to end the filibuster. Again, this is coming back to ending the filibuster. We are not going to do this we're not getting 60 votes in the Senate, probably anytime soon. Let's be honest about that. And we need to understand the fact that when Democrats hold a 51-vote majority in the Senate, we're representing a supermajority of Americans in this country. States controlled by Democrats typically have much larger populations. We're representing a supermajority. We need to be ending the filibuster.
Thank you. Steve.
Plain and simple, we need to make voting easier so more people engage. We need more people engaged. Thank you all for you guys are engaged. You're showing up to this. This is great. This is what democracy looks like. So we need things that we need. We need universal voter registration. We need no excuse vote by mail. I would love to see pilot programs and mobile voting. I think the technology is there that we can get mobile voting and make it super easy for people to vote. I would also like to see ranked choice voting, open nonpartisan primaries. I also think we should lower the voting age to 16. Let's start building that muscle of democracy, that muscle of voting and our citizens younger. At 16, I think you're fine. You're ready to go. And if we start the people that vote the first time, they vote again and again and again. So if we can start that at 16, we're going to get more voter participation. We also need a nationwide ban on gerrymandering, and also ending Citizens United, which would also increase the vote.
Thank you. So, shockingly, I have time for one more question and then closing statements. And also for time, I'd like to let you know that we're just going to do 1 minute each for closing statements. So, my last specific question, I should say. Do you support the current use and funding of ICE, aka Immigration and Customs Enforcement? Kevin, I'm going to start with you.
I do not. I think ICE and DHS has largely lost all credibility, and that we need to defund and abolish ICE and replace it with something similar to the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS, that we had that predated immigration enforcement. We need to restrict Border Patrol to within 5 miles of the border. And I also support granting amnesty to the millions of people who have been living here, working here, paying taxes, building our economy, and following our laws. I believe they are our neighbors, just as anyone else is, and they came into a broken system, and because the system wasn't working, we need to give them that amnesty, and then do a hard reset and completely overhaul our immigration system to make sure that we have easier access to visas and pathways to citizenship.
Thank you. Denise.
We absolutely need Customs and Border Patrol, and we absolutely need interior enforcement and worksite inspections. How that is done really matters. As a U.S. Senator, I will hold accountable anyone in the chain of command who's trampling on the Constitution and implementing their job in a way that deviates from standard operating procedures and is overall inhumane or causing bodily injury to the people they interact with. However, we do not have a nation if we don't have a border. I mentioned earlier the impact of mass immigration. Again, we've known since 2008, the Civil Rights Report, that mass illegal immigration tracks with mass incarceration for black men with a high school diploma or less, as well as unemployment for white and black men with a high school diploma or less. We can be a welcoming nation and have order. We can have immigration control and enforcement and maintain our humanity. That's what I'll seek to emphasize.
Thank you. Sean.
I support funding, but not without reform. Immigration law is put in place, and ICE is the agency to enforce that law. So without ICE, we won't have anybody to enforce it. But the way that they're enforcing it now, we can't do it that way. What we have to do is we have to, whenever they want to implement an operation, they have to contact local law enforcement. It needs to be done in a coalition. They can't be standing on the streets like it's a militarized operation. It needs to be targeted. It needs to be going after undocumented criminals, not the individuals who are working side by side and trying to take care of their family and pay taxes. And also, what we need to focus on is that individuals that are promoting abolish ICE, they're just out of touch. We need individuals with real experience in this seat.
Thank you. Brian.
I don't support leaving ICE in place as an agency or funding it because maybe Democrats change it when they get in control, but it took Trump 6 months to turn ICE into an agency that was rappelling out of helicopters into South Shore apartments, dragging kids out of their rooms in the middle of the night in handcuffs. This is an incredibly inhumane agency. We need to go back to how this was done before DHS was formed. We need strong borders. We need comprehensive immigration reform. But I also tell people we need a comprehensive foreign policy reform. U.S. foreign policy is one of the largest drivers of mass migration around the planet. The war on terror alone displaced some 38 million people around the world. And this isn't even talking about Central and South America. This isn't even talking about the effects that U.S. sanctions, like what we're doing to Cuba right now, like what we're been doing to Cuba and Venezuela for 60 years now, have been doing. This is a root driver of mass migration. We need to stop making it hard for people to live and thrive in the communities that they're from and then demonizing them when they get here.
Thank you. Steve.
So last time that when we initiated a government shutdown, I argued that a promise for healthcare subsidies vote was not enough to reopen the government. We also needed ICE reform. We didn't do it, but we're going to get some more chances. So we should keep the government shut down until we get ICE reform. Part of that list for me is no masks or hidden badges by ICE agents. ICE needs warrants signed by a judge before they go after somebody. Make sure they only go after criminals. Independent investigations when force is used. And lastly, firing Stephen Miller.
Jonathan.
I do not support ICE in it. I support abolishing ICE, I should say. And I first want to acknowledge two messages that I think we all know, but have not gotten to Washington, is just how scary ICE is for all of us in our neighborhoods. I think when I'm taking my kids to school, I don't want to run into them. I don't want my kids to see armed, masked agents when we're on our way to school. That's just not something that's conducive to a safe community. Also, the crimes that ICE is purporting to enforce are almost exclusively nonviolent crimes. Immigration crimes are nonviolent, and so ICE is unconstitutional law enforcement in the sense that they are using violence to purport to enforce nonviolent crimes. I support abolishing ICE, stripping ICE agent immunity, a full independent investigation in the Senate along the lines of kind of a Truth and Reconciliation Committee so that this kind of thing can never happen again.
Thank you. And with that, we have closing statements. 1 minute for each person. Denise, we'll start with you this time.
So thank you again for the conversation. My name is Dr. Pamela Denise Long. I am running for U.S. Senate because I am looking to solve problems. I'm not here to point fingers at any particular elected official, but I understand that as a U.S. Senator, I have an obligation and duty to hold any elected official accountable should the case solve for it. What I'm asking you to lean into is the courage and competence to get things done, not to be driven by emotion, but to be driven by policy. I would ask you to take a look at my website, which is long4senate2026.com, LONGFOR-Senate2026.com. You can find me on social media, TikTok, Facebook. You can also find me on my Newsweek column. I'm a doctor of organizational development, master of educational psychology, and an occupational therapist. I have 30 years of experience living, professionally carrying out the areas that I will have to regulate. I'm fighting for you, and I'll ask you to come alongside on March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is Attorney Sean Brown, and I'm here because we cannot recycle leadership and expect different results. We're going to get the same thing over and over. So we have to make a change. Punch ballot number 8, Sean Brown, because I stand for change, and here's why. I'm ready to attack those big-ticket items with big-ticket plans. A universal health care plan, ready to go. There is a plan for safer communities, got that written up, ready to go. There's a plan for immigration reform. We already had something like that in 2013 with the Gang of 8 bill. It didn't get passed, but now I'm going to push that forward again, because with me in office, you're going to have a strong Senate who can actually reach across the aisle and get things done. Vote Sean Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
So again, my name is Brian Maxwell, and like I tell people, my platform has 3 main points: anti-war, Medicare for all, and making sure that billionaires and corporations at least pay what the rest of us are paying. Our government already collects enough in taxes. There's already more than enough wealth in this country to fund the things we need in this country: housing, healthcare, and education. It's just too much of our federal tax dollars go towards endless wars overseas, and too much of the wealth in this country ends up in the top 1% in this country, not in the hands of working class families. As a Democratic Party, we need to be talking about re-examining our issues and having these hard conversations and talking about how are we going to rebuild the Rainbow Coalition, the multiracial, multi-faith, multi-generational coalition that really got Biden and Harris into the White House in 2020. How do we rebuild that coalition so we stop handing the country back into the hands of people like Donald Trump? Again, my name is Brian Maxwell, and don't forget to vote on March 17th. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve.
I entered this race knowing that I was going to be a massive underdog, because what is going on in Washington is not working. Our government is out of touch, and it's not delivering results. And if we keep sending these same establishment politicians to Washington, we can keep expecting the same results. I'm running for U.S. Senate because I am solely focused on making life more affordable in America. And if I could just make it 1 or 2 or 3% better, that's a job well done, as opposed to just going on cable news and arguing and getting in partisan fights.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm Jonathan Dean, and I'm running for U.S. Senate because we are living in unprecedented times. A lot of the policies that myself and other Democrats have been talking about on the campaign trail are policies that Democrats have been talking about for 5, 10, 15 years. And so the question that I have, and what motivated me to get in this race, is why are those policies not law yet? And they're not law yet because we can't just send somebody to Washington who's going to conduct traditional legislative functions like oversight, sitting in committees. We need to send people to Washington who are going to coordinate from Congress with outside partners like favorable media and nonprofits to drive a winning message to bring in new voters to get these policies that we've been talking about for over a decade across the finish line. That's what I'm up to. Check out my website, deanforil.com, and check me out on social media at deanforil.
Thank you. Kevin.
So I got in this race because I want to believe in the democracy that I risked my life for overseas, the democracy I taught to my students. My life in public service started not too far from here in Brownsville, in my first classroom that had leaky windows when it rained. But to be a real democracy, that means not just that anyone can run, but that anyone can win based on idea, merit, character, experience. Up at this table here, there are candidates missing. I would like to point out that Congresswoman Kelly is with us this evening, or this afternoon, so she is here. She has shown up. But there are two candidates that did not show up, and showing up matters. That's why. I'm sorry, I misspoke. They were not invited to this one?
No, they're en route.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I just assumed all the candidates would be up here at once. Got it. Everybody came, just not all at the same time. Okay. So I'm running to prove that anyone can win without needing to bend the knee to the 1%, the donor class, those who control our democracy through their money. And we're doing it. We've reached 12 million people on social media. I've canvassed all 102 counties, and we have volunteers across the state passing out our literature. So vote for Kevin Ryan if you want to vote boldly.
Thank you so much. And that concludes the first round of this forum. Thank you so much to our candidates for being here today. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a short break, and I believe we'll be back here at 2:30 with additional candidates. But thank you so much again for being here. We really appreciate it. Representative Krishnamurthy was slated to be here, but we're not quite sure, I think, where he is, but want to make sure we respect everyone's time. And, of course, we have two candidates here that we can hear from, and so want to make sure that, that we do so. So maybe we'll get a few more questions in. Want to welcome Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton and Representative Robin Kelly. Really quick, I'm going to go over the format again, just so everyone's on the same page, and then we'll open it up for opening statements. So again, we're going to do opening statements, 2 minutes each. Then I'm going to ask questions, and because we have fewer candidates, each candidate gets 90 seconds to respond to the question. And we're going to go through a few more. And then we're going to do, again, a 1 minute closing statement at the end for each candidate. So, yeah, let's get started with opening statements. Lieutenant Governor, I'd like to start with you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Promote the Vote Coalition for hosting today's forum. I also want to thank our moderator, Simone, and all of you for coming out today to hear from us and to be engaged in this incredibly important race. I am Juliana Stratton. I'm so proud to serve as your Lieutenant Governor alongside Governor J.B. Pritzker, and I'm especially proud to be running to represent you in the United States Senate. My journey to this point really started 10 years ago. I was working full-time, I was a mom, and I was caring for my mother, Velma, after her diagnosis with Alzheimer's. And I can tell you it was the hardest thing that I'd ever done personally, but also the greatest honor of my life to care for my mother in her final years. And at that time, my state representative was working to strip away health care from seniors like my mother. And I got angry, and I looked at the television when I saw that news story, and I said, somebody should run against him. And I did not know that it was going to be me, but it was me. Because I don't shy away from a good fight, and I know that government should be a partner to the people and not a roadblock. So I ran, I won, and here we are 10 years later. And health care is still at stake. And it's not just health care. We're seeing a 5-alarm fire that's been ignited by Donald Trump. And now we're seeing attacks on health care, our Constitution, our rights, and our democracy, and we're seeing attacks on our neighbors. I'm proud of what we've done here in Illinois. And in so many ways, I want to take the Illinois blueprint to Washington, D.C. We've raised wages, protected reproductive freedom, created thousands of good-paying jobs, and we need that kind of leadership in Washington, and that's the leader I will be. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Promote the Vote, our moderator, and all of you for being here. You could be anywhere else on a Saturday, and you chose to be here with us, so I so appreciate that. I am Robin Kelly. I'm the daughter of a postal worker and a grocer. I'm a mom and a very dedicated public servant. I've been in Congress for almost 13 years, and I'm running for U.S. Senate to make your life better and more affordable. It really ticks me off. It makes me angry that Donald Trump and his billionaire, millionaire friends have only gotten richer where everybody else is struggling and feeling really squeezed. My district is the biggest Democratic district in Illinois. I'm urban, suburban, and rural. I have 4,500 farms in my district, believe it or not, but it doesn't matter where you live. I see it and I hear it, that people are struggling. So I'm running on a platform of people over profits, where millionaires, billionaires, and corporations finally pay their fair share so we can invest in housing and affordable housing. In the richest country in the history of the world, we can all have health care. We can raise the wages. We've been $7.25 for far, far too long. People aren't paying more for child care than they are for rent or mortgage. That we can invest in economic development and growth so we have economic opportunity. I am not afraid to show up, stand up, or speak up. I've stood up to the NRA, health insurance companies, and political bullies, and I've won those fights. I'm standing up now to Donald Trump. I made his hit list for calling his ICE tactics Gestapo, and I have filed impeachment papers against Kristi Noem. And I'm very proud to say 190 of my colleagues are on that paper. So I will work every day in the U.S. Senate to make your life more affordable and to hold these agencies, this president, more accountable. I look forward to your questions, and thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let's get into some specific policy stuff. I want to start with something that is on everyone's mind for sure, affordability. Everything is expensive right now, groceries, housing, but I want to focus specifically on the people who are most impacted, folks on SNAP, folks on Medicaid, who are struggling now to get those benefits. How will your platform help those people specifically? Representative Kelly, I'd like to start with you this time. You have 90 seconds.
Actually, my People Over Profits platform would help everybody. It would help young people punch their ticket to the middle class. It would help seniors, because I believe that we need to cover hearing aids and eyeglasses and dental care when you're on Medicare. And again, Medicare for all is Medicare health care for everybody. Also, I would claw back in the U.S. Senate the big ugly bill, because you realize they haven't implemented everything yet, and they waited. They tried to be slick. They're waiting until November 2026 to put the rest of the Medicaid cutbacks in play. So many people would lose their health insurance. Hospitals are closed. It doesn't matter if you're on Medicaid or not. If that's your hospital, that's your hospital. 9 hospitals would close in rural areas in Illinois, 2 in areas that I cover now. So I would fight to reverse some of all of the parts, really, of the big, ugly bill. And again, my People Over Profits, building affordable housing, raising wages, to help people. Like I said, it's $7.25 now. Did you cut me off? I didn't see. Oh, okay. $7.25 now, and also investing in economic development and growth, so people have economic opportunity for decent paying jobs. He cut the Inflation Reduction Act. That was a lot of money and investment in the environment, a lot of investment in solar jobs, and all of those jobs and training had to be paused because of all of those big ugly cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should say too, you'll hear a bell too if you're at time. You'll hear a bell if you're at time as well. I know that light. It does. It looks like the sun. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, this is the big issue that I'm hearing about from voters all across the state, because everything is too expensive right now, whether it's housing or gas or groceries. And remember, we have a president who said that on day one he was going to lower inflation. He didn't. He said on day one he was going to lower the price of groceries. That has not happened. In fact, he has done the opposite, and he has made things worse. So what I want to do, especially for low-wage workers, is I want to raise wages. In fact, I'm proposing a $25 minimum wage. Right now, the minimum wage at the federal level is $7.25. And we know that there's no one that could take care of themselves or their families at that level. And I'm proud of the work that we did alongside many of you in the fight for 15 to raise wages, the minimum wage, to $15 an hour here in Illinois. It was the first big bill that Governor Pritzker and I got signed into law. But $15 an hour is $31,200 a year. We need to raise wages to a livable wage, not just the bare minimum. We need to think about how to pay people so that they can have a little money in their pocket, save a little for their future, take care of their families, and have a little extra to spend in the small businesses in their community. So that's what I will fight for, a livable wage, not just the minimum.
Let's talk about reproductive care access. Illinois is the most traveled to state for abortions by people who are pregnant outside of Illinois. What's your position on reproductive health care and making it accessible? Lieutenant Governor, let's start with you.
Well, I'm proud of the work that we have done right here in Illinois, and I've been right on the front lines to make sure that I make it clear that we don't need the government to tell us what to do with our bodies. We can decide for ourselves. And so here in Illinois, we have passed and strengthened the Reproductive Health Act, enshrining the right to abortion care into state law. We made sure that we have protections for providers and patients so that those traveling to Illinois are protected. We passed the Birth Equity Initiative, and that was under my leadership, to address the fact that black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications. And in a reproductive justice framework, we need to ensure a healthy pregnancy, childbirth, and the ability to raise a child in a healthy and safe community. So that's leadership that I have brought. But here's the thing. We need to do this on the federal level. We saw that Dobbs has overturned Roe versus Wade. And while I'm proud that Illinois is an island for reproductive freedom in the Midwest, no one should have to travel outside of their state boundaries to get the essential care that they need. And many could not do it because they don't have money for transportation. They don't have money for lodging. They don't have the kind of job where they can take off and head to Illinois to get their care. So when I get to the United States Senate, I'm going to fight to restore the protections of Roe. And we not only need to do that, we need to even go beyond it to make sure we do what we did in Illinois.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
I have been fighting this issue for so many years. When I lived in Peoria, Illinois, I was on the board of Planned Parenthood. That wasn't a popular thing to be on in Illinois. That was back in the 80s. It was devastating that Roe v. Wade was overturned. I brought the issue of maternal mortality and morbidity to Congress, and it was my legislation that extended the postpartum Medicaid coverage period from 60 days to a year, without a doubt saving lives, saving all women's lives, but black women 3 to 1 times rate, but it's even higher in the state of Illinois and other places. So I would definitely fight to overturn Roe v. Wade. I'm on every piece of legislation that I can be on as far as reproductive rights, reproductive freedoms, reproductive justice, and I will continue to fight that fight in the U.S. Senate. But because of Roe v. Wade, they've put women, and particularly black women, in the position to lose their lives, that to increase, because we're forcing people that don't want to have children to have children. So healthcare is my biggest portfolio. I'm the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust. I'm on Energy and Commerce, the Health Subcommittee. So I am doing everything I can right now to do what we can do. Again, as far as reproductive rights, justice, I'm on the Reproductive Freedom and Justice Caucus. And I will continue that in the U.S. Senate.
Thank you. Let's stay on healthcare and look at it a little more broadly. What policies do you support in healthcare to make healthcare more affordable and more accessible? I think I start with Representative Kelly this time.
As I said, I'm on the Healthcare Subcommittee. I'm the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust. I'm one of the founding members of Medicare for All that we haven't been able to get done yet. I will take all that knowledge, experience to the U.S. Senate. We need to do more around maternal mortality and morbidity. I have legislation that takes care of mom and baby before, during, and after pregnancy. As I said earlier, as far as Medicare, we need to make sure that hearing aids are covered, dental is covered, eyeglasses are covered. My husband, my late husband, 4 months before he died, he needed new hearing aids. It cost $9,000 for his hearing aids, and thank God we had a credit card that we could put that on. But a lot of people cannot do that. That all needs to be absorbed into healthcare costs. And of course, Medicare for All would take care of preventative work. Also, with my husband, he got sick when we were in Montreal. He went to the emergency room for 3 days. We got the bill. It was $800. That would never, ever, ever happen in one day in any of the hospitals in the United States or the Chicagoland area. So again, the big push for Medicare for All, CHIPS, making sure that everyone, again, has health care, and really concentrating on prevention and more focus and concentration on mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, Donald Trump is stripping away health care from millions of Americans for one reason, and that is to give his wealthy friends a tax break. And that's what we're seeing right now. I am going to fight for Medicare for all, because I believe that health care is a right and not a privilege, and that everyone who needs to see a doctor should be able to see a doctor. And right now, I'm not sure why, except for the fact that this system is broken, that we still have so many people that I am communicating with, voters that I'm talking to all across this state, who are deciding between paying their bills or going to the doctor, between paying rent or seeing a healthcare professional that they need. And we know that these inequities continue to widen, especially for some of our most under-resourced communities and our black and brown communities, our rural communities, where we are seeing healthcare deserts, pharmacy deserts. We need to make sure people have access to healthcare, and we need to make sure that we are fixing this broken system. One of the ways that we need to do so is by getting the influence of the healthcare industry's corporate money out of politics in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. I want to move now to conversations. There are proposals in Congress right now to require photo ID and proof of citizenship in order to vote, prohibiting universal vote by mail, ranked choice voting. And we know that these policies will disproportionately impact women, people of color, low-income voters. Can you tell us how your platform would make voting more accessible to Americans? Lieutenant Governor, we'll start with you.
So the president talks about wanting to nationalize elections. And this is just another example of how Donald Trump really does not want to see us have another election. He does not want to see us be able to make our voices heard at the ballot box. And we must speak out every chance we get about the fact that this president is trying to suppress the vote. You know, my father, Henry, who I lost in November, marched from Selma to Montgomery in 1965 in protest of voting discrimination. And here we are 60 years later seeing proposals like the SAVE Act, requiring IDs, disenfranchising voters. What we did here in Illinois is we made Election Day a state holiday. We expanded voting hours, and we made sure that vote by mail was permanent. And yet, look at what he's doing with vote by mail, changing the postmark requirements through the Postal Service. So we have to call out what's being done. We have to make sure voters are educated, but we also need policies like what we've done in Illinois to make sure voting can continue. I will fight against the SAVE Act, and I'll fight against any effort to try to suppress the vote, take away the vote, or make it less. We should make voting more accessible, not less, and that's what I'll fight for.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
I've already voted against the SAVE Act, and luckily, I think I can say it will not make it through the Senate because they need too many Democratic votes for it to make it through. But Donald Trump is trying to steal the election. That's what he did with calling Texas up and saying find 5 seats. Luckily, California did Prop 50 to balance that off, but we are still losing good members of Congress and black and brown members of Congress because of what he's trying to do. Luckily, Indiana and Missouri didn't go along with this program, but we're still watching Florida. I voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act twice in the House, but we didn't have the votes in the Senate. So definitely would continue to push that so it could pass in the House and the Senate, because there's so many stipulations there would definitely help with getting more people to vote. You know, with the SAVE Act, it could affect 70 million women because of the last name change. Your name now doesn't match your birth certificate, and you can't use your real ID that Illinois has pushed so much for, or your driver's license. And if you get past that, then when you go to vote, you still have to have another piece of identification to prove yourself, and that'll disenfranchise millions and millions and millions of voters because it costs like $130, and some people just can't afford that when we talk about, you know, affordability. So working hard, continue to work hard, even though we voted against it for the SAVE Act.
Thank you. I want to move along to immigration. We are here in Chicago where we have felt the effects of Operation Midway Blitz. So I'll ask straight up, do you support the current use and funding of ICE, aka Immigration and Customs Enforcement? Representative Kelly.
There's kids here, so I won't use my real language I want to use. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely not. I voted against it in Congress. You know, we're waiting now to see, it went down in the Senate, so we're negotiating back and forth. But we have definite demands that we're demanding before we do anything else. We don't think ICE should get any more money. They got enough money, enough slush fund in the big ugly bill. Again, one of the reasons I filed articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem, because she has got to go. But I feel like we need to look at the whole setup. The Department of Homeland Security, ICE, Border Patrol. It was Border Patrol agents that killed Alex Preddy, not ICE agents. And also we need to look at USCIS that deals with citizenship and asylum. None of it is up to par. None of it. And it all needs to be dismantled. We need to make the dreamers Americans, and the over 11 million people that have been here and paying into the system but not getting anything out of it. We need to find that pathway and find the pathway sooner than later. We've tried a couple of times since I've been in Congress, but the Republicans have stopped it. But immigration reform is so important, good for the country, and ICE, CBP, USCIS, Homeland Security all have to go and be, resurrected. And also, there's no member of Congress that thinks we don't need enforcement. We do still need that. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, all of us here today and those who might be watching here in Illinois have felt the effects of Operation Midway Blitz, the fear that's been instilled in our communities, watching our neighbors be snatched off the street by masked agents, stuffed into unmarked vehicles with no due process, with no warrant, taken who knows where, not provided any care. I've been out in the streets. I've been out protesting alongside fellow Illinoisans. I've been to Broadview, standing up and speaking out. I have been at schools helping children go from school to home because they were scared that their parents might not be there or they wouldn't make it home safely without being taken by ICE. I want to abolish ICE, because I've seen up close and personal the danger that they have caused, and I don't believe that this agency can be reformed. And I want to see ICE and CBP out of our American cities. I would not vote to give one single dime for an agency that I want to see abolished. We have to rein in ICE. We have to make sure that there's no immunity for these federal agents. And any of them that have committed crimes, and we've seen people get killed, point blank. Anyone who committed crimes needs to be held accountable, investigated, and prosecuted, and we need ICE out.
Thank you. I'd like to get more specific on immigration reform here. I'd like to hear you speak to, more specific policies, but also outlining a positive vision for what immigration enforcement would look like that you would push for if you were elected to the U.S. Senate. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, let's start with the fact that ICE has been put, I think in 2006, just in 2006, I believe, under a counterterrorism agency, DHS. So right from the very beginning, immigration is put in an agency that gives it a punitive approach. And what we cannot do is look at immigration through the eyes of criminalization. And that's what's happening right now. It's why when people talk about this enforcement, why I say we have to abolish ICE, because the system is not built to really build a pathway to citizenship. It's built to criminalize our immigrant neighbors that have contributed so much to our communities. So what I want to do is we put all this money and double the budget and put billions of dollars into ICE. Instead of the criminalization, why don't we build a system where there's more immigration judges that can move these cases through a path to citizenship? Why don't we have more caseworkers and support systems and people in social services in our communities to help families get from point A to point B? We need to make sure that dreamers and DACA recipients have a real path to citizenship. And remember, there was a bipartisan bill to get this done, and Donald Trump called Republicans personally to tell them he wanted it blocked, and that's why this is not about immigration. It's not about public safety. This is about Donald Trump trying to normalize the presence of the military in American streets, and I will not stand for it.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
Well, the president said he was looking for the worst of the worst, but we all know that has not happened. Renee Good wasn't the worst of the worst. Alex Preddy wasn't the worst of the worst. And that was my district that the helicopters landed in and people rappelled out and took out little kids, Americans, and undocumented. We need to look at the whole system. It may be decided that any enforcement goes under the Department of Justice, not this Department of Justice, but when we can really clean out the whole system, because he has such incompetent leaders heading all of these agencies. So looking at that, I've said already, making the Dreamers American. This is the only country they've known. Finding a short pathway for the undocumented, the over 11 million that have been here, and also changing the way CBP operates. And when I say change, even, training, how are we vetting these people? I believe when I had to speak at the January 6th hearing, the 5th anniversary, I was one of the last people out on my hands and knees. Kristi Noem took $200 million of taxpayers' money to advertise, it looked like a movie trailer, to attract people to work for ICE. And I believe a lot of them are the insurrectionists that Trump let out of jail, the way they made it sound so beautiful to be an ICE member. So I think we need to do a better job vetting, do a better job of training, and I've often said the people that are dealing with the people coming across the border need to have a different type of background, one grounded in service, not enforcement.
Thank you. We talked a little bit about Roe v. Wade and Dobbs earlier. As we also know, the Senate is responsible for confirming federal judicial appointments, not just the Supreme Court, but all Article III judges. What criteria will you use when it comes to confirming these nominations that come straight from the president, Representative Kelly?
Well, one thing I think that we have to change the ethical standards. As a member of Congress, I have different ethical standards than the Supreme Court justice seems to have, gifts and all kind of things like that. So I think we have to change the standards. But I'm looking for someone with integrity. I'm looking, we have to do opposition research, whatever we have to do, look at where they've been involved, where they've worked, what kind of judgments have come out from what they've done in the past. And we have to, I know people can say anything, but finding more proof that what they are saying is the truth, like people that promised about Roe v. Wade, quite frankly, they lied. But at this point, I understand giving the president the person that they feel most comfortable with, like if it was Barack Obama, but not that even Merrick Garland, I felt like it should have been a black woman named to the Supreme Court rather than Merrick Garland. But I think he was trying to appease the conservatives, and that kind of thing to get the vote. But at this point, and I would not say this in the past, but I couldn't vote for anyone that Donald Trump recommended, because his history is so sullied and horrible, and the things that have happened. It was shocking yesterday that they ruled the way they did on the tariffs, but he was so intimidating. So will they be that brave again, or will they go back to just going along with his program?
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, let's just say right off the bat that we know that the Supreme Court of the United States is supposed to be a separate and co-equal branch of the government. But that's not what we're seeing right now. We are seeing a Supreme Court that is simply, and yes, there was a decision yesterday that I think all of us were very glad to see about tariffs, but by and large, the Supreme Court has been an agent to rubber stamp Donald Trump's authoritarian agenda. And I can tell you that they've thrown out precedent, and anybody that violates code of ethics should certainly no longer serve and should be thrown off the bench. And what I would do as your next United States Senator is, number one, I will not vote to confirm any of Donald Trump's appointments to the United States Supreme Court. And I would make sure that we look at what kinds of reforms are necessary, and we do need to consider reforms in light of their lifetime appointments. What that could look like is, it could look like considering term limits for Supreme Court justices. It could mean that we look at the calendar of appointments, because we know that Republicans have blocked some highly qualified appointees for political reasons. And it could look like expanding the Supreme Court. But I will consider everything on the table because we cannot have a Supreme Court that is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that is serving as a check on the president.
Thank you. Staying with the branches of government and the role of Congress, as a senator, how would you assert congressional authority given the threats we have seen from the executive under this executive branch? Lieutenant Governor, I know it's a broad question. So I'll welcome a clarification if you want one.
Well, no need for clarification, because one of the things that I want to do is I will not vote for Chuck Schumer as leader of the Democratic caucus. I can tell you that much, because I don't believe that we are seeing the kind of fight that we need to stand up to this president's agenda. And I start there because that kind of leadership has a real impact on the way that we are going to push back against this president's authoritarian agenda. I also know that there have been a number of times that I have spoken out and said that we need Congress to stand firm. We're seeing it right now with this vote that has to do with DHS funding. Hold the line. Do not give in, because this is critical. We have to know our demands, and we have to make sure that we hold firm. And I know it's not easy when we're facing a shutdown, but we have to use the levers at our disposal to let this president know that he is not going to get away unchecked. And secondly, we saw it a couple of other times as well, where we are so close, a health care vote and other times. So we have to hold the line. I want to be a unifying voice in the caucus to make sure that we not only pass legislation, be a voice, use my bully pulpit, but I'm going to certainly be the kind of leader that pushes our party to be more courageous, to stand and fight and not fold.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
Well, as someone there now and someone in leadership under Hakeem Jeffries, I can assure you that we are fighting. That's how the Epstein files were opened up. That's how the ACA tax premium credits in the House passed. 17 Republicans joined us, and that's why DHS got voted down. So we are fighting. Sometimes it's a number game, and we don't have the numbers that the Republican Party has. And I know how to work across the aisle and build relationships to get things done. I do not give up my values at all. And I have to comment, when it comes to Chuck Schumer, what I say is I have to see who's running against him, because John Fetterman is a Democrat, and I don't want him to be my leader either. So if you tell me Chris Murphy or you tell me Cory Booker, that's a different story. But I have to see who's running before I say a blanket no, to make sure that person is going to be better than who's there now. I've never been afraid to stand up, show up, or speak up. You know, I don't always agree with everything that has gone down, whether it was Barack Obama as the president, Hakeem Jeffries as a leader. So I'm not afraid to speak up, but I am a coalition builder, and I'm a coalition builder on both sides of the House. I started doing something called Breaking Bread, and I had Democrats and Republicans. We catered dinner, so all of us would get together and get to know each other as people, because that helps too. That helps with the trust. That helps with everybody's not trying to get everybody, because it's one thing to fight, but people want to have results, not just fighting.
Thank you. To get more specific on this even more, let's talk about funds that have been frozen, funds meant to go to Illinois that have been frozen by the federal government. How would you in the Senate ensure that we could get that funding back? Representative Kelly.
You know, since this man has been president, there's a lot of things we realize and a lot of loopholes we know have got to be closed, laws codified. He is holding back funding, you know, to the blue states with blue cities, but it's so dumb because the blue states have Republicans that vote for him, you know, in it also. So he's making, you know, all kind of people suffer. But we need to look at all the loopholes, and that's what I would do in the Senate to be able to stop him from doing it. He's held back money for child care. He's holding back money for gun violence prevention, $158 million and $16 million just for the city of Chicago. But we have to look at, the loopholes, the law, and see what we could do, to close those loopholes, and just keep calling them out, because he's affecting Republicans also. Republicans like my district, urban, suburban, and rural. The rural part of my district is one of the poorer parts of my district, so they need those funds too, and those are the very people, that voted for him. So, again, looking at closing loopholes that we can close, making it illegal to do what he's doing with appropriated funds.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, I want to do exactly what we've been doing here in Illinois. You all may recall when we all stood up, Governor Pritzker and leaders at every level of government, we all stood together and told Donald Trump to his face, we don't want you here. And we don't want you interfering with what happens here in Illinois. And he tries it over and over again. He tries it, and it's specifically targeted to blue states and blue cities and those that dare to speak up against him. So we need to keep doing that, because what happens when we call him out, we find out that he is actually a very weak man, and he starts to retreat. And we've seen that pattern over and over again. We also have to take him to court every time he does something like this, like threatening the funding that is owed to the state of Illinois. We have an incredible Attorney General in Kwame Raoul, who has been standing strong, going to court time and time again. And even if you don't see every outcome, I want you to know that we're winning in court. So there are people who are judges and others who see it in our way. And does it take more resources? Does it take more energy? Absolutely it does. But this is not the time to sit on the sidelines. This is the time to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. And every time we do, I promise you, we're going to come out on top.
Thank you. Now for something a little different. Let's talk about education. And I just want to start real basic. What is your priority when it comes to education funding, Lieutenant Governor?
My priorities around education are primarily, well, I won't say twofold. There's a couple of things that I want to see happen. My mother, that I talked about, that I cared for when she had Alzheimer's in her final years, was a public school teacher. And when I think about what Donald Trump is doing and his administration to dismantle the Department of Education, here's what I know. Yes, it's about education, because they don't want us to be educated. They don't want a citizenry that is asking questions or educated and will push back against what he is trying to do. But it's also an attack on public education in particular, public schools and public school teachers like my mother was. And so I'm proud that I've been endorsed by the Illinois Federation of Teachers for my stance on fighting for public education. And I will always do that. I also want to make sure that we rebuild the Department of Education that he's dismantling, because we know those Title I funds that go to our most under-resourced schools, to our rural schools, to students with disabilities, and so many students who are learning English as a second language, it's going to have a disproportionate impact on those that need the most support. But when we rebuild the Department of Education, we have to make sure that equity is truly at the center, because we know that every child was not being adequately educated in the first place.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
We definitely have to rebuild the Department of Education. He is trying to destroy it, trying to privatize everything for his friends. We need to make sure that as a federal government that we're supposed to fund IDEA for disabled children at 40%, and we have not done that. I would fight hard to make sure that's done. Also rebuild Title I. That's what helps schools in low-income communities. That's what helps with teacher development. And I represent the Southland, and we see teachers come and work at our schools for a year, but because of the inequitable pay, then they get experience and then they leave. I'm not saying I blame them, because they need to make money too, partly paying back student loans. So we need to make sure that pay is equitable for teachers across the state of Illinois, across the United States. Also, this is not really federal, but we depend on property taxes, and that's killing some of the areas and some of the schools that we don't have the business in the south suburbs that they have in other places. So funding schools is on the back of homeowners, which is a problem too. And then they don't feel the schools are necessarily, in the best way. So we need to resource our schools. We need to make sure our schools, like before, had counselors or social workers. We need to support our teachers with teacher development. We need to make sure, maybe it can't be in every school, but even nurses in schools is all very helpful, to our students. And I think teaching is the noblest profession, so we need to do everything we can to support teachers in schools.
Thank you. Let's drill down on early education, preschool, and you'll throw childcare in there too, right? This is a forum on women's issues. This is obviously of great concern for so many mothers in Illinois. What role does the federal government and Congress play in making early childhood education more accessible? Representative Kelly.
Well, I look at that also as the Department of Education to cover that age group too. And I so admire New Mexico. My former colleague Michelle Lujan Grisham, made early education and child care affordable or no rate for everyone. And I think we need to work toward that. There is nothing like starting with a good foundation. That is the bottom line. Kids come to kindergarten or first grade. Some can read, some can do this, that, and the other, and some cannot do much, in comparison, and we need to make sure our education is equitable. And also, as far as my people over profits, I talk about child care. I just had someone tell me that as she works, her husband works, their child care was $4,200 a month more than their mortgage. And that's the same thing with rent. People are paying more. So I would like to see child care costs capped. And I believe if millionaires, billionaires, and corporations pay their fair share, I believe if we reverse some of his all of his ugly things in the big ugly bill with the $1 trillion of tax cuts to the well-off and well-connected, we have the money to do these things. We have the money to start our kids off, in the best way, the best foundation that we can start them off.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, we're working to make Illinois the best state in the nation to raise a family, and part of that is making child care more accessible and affordable. A couple of things that we have already done is the Smart Start Illinois program, where we are working to end preschool deserts. Many of you may know that there are many communities, not just in the city of Chicago or not just in our suburban areas, but in our rural areas where you don't have enough preschool seats. And we have added thousands of preschool seats in every corner of this state to make sure children can get the best start in life. We know that 90% of brain development happens from ages 0 to 5. So the investment we make in early childhood education is going to leave us with the greatest results. When I was a state representative, I was the chief sponsor of the bill to end preschool expulsion. You heard that right. 3- and 4-year-olds getting expelled from preschool, primarily black and brown boys and increasingly black and brown girls. So the work that we do around early childhood also has to be done through an equity lens and making sure that all children are getting the support that they need. And then finally, a big part of making sure that we support families who are looking for child care is making sure that we are supporting the workers in child care who are often black and brown women who often don't get the wages that they deserve. I will fight for that at the federal level.
Speaking on the other end, higher education, workforce training, as senator, how would you get more Illinois kids into higher paying jobs or, into higher education or making higher education more accessible? Lieutenant Governor.
Something else that we have done here in Illinois, making higher education more accessible and affordable. Just this week, you might have heard the news that we have now have the statistic that 40% of Illinois students in our state colleges and in our state universities are going to college for free. 40%. And that's important because we know that college student loan debt is something that can carry with someone as they are trying to advance in their career, buy their first home. We also reinstituted the Smart Buy program, which helps first-time home buyers who have student loan debt. We erase some of that student loan debt so that they can buy a home. I have a daughter who went to a 4-year college because I thought that's what she had to do. She wanted to be a farmer, and I didn't know how to help her be a farmer on the south side of Chicago. So I said, you have to go get your 4-year degree. Well, she came home, got her degree, came home, and ended up still wanting to do what she loved. I wish that I would have known to direct her to some of these trade and technical programs that would have given her a direct pathway to the job that she wanted. She's doing great. I'm so happy to see her do it. But she has student loan debt, and that was unnecessary. So one of the things I will do in the Senate is make sure we expand access to trade and technical education, and I want to help Pell Grants to cover it so that people won't be saddled with loan debt.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
One of the gems in my district, I go from the south side of Chicago to Danville and west of Pontiac, is the Kankakee Career Center. I love that place. Kids go to high school during the morning, and then they go to the Career Center in the afternoon. If you want to be a fireman, a cop, a graphic designer, a cosmetologist, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Some, yes, college, and some not. But they get the experience there. They get to try out to see if that's what they really want to do. We need more places like that. They're trying to establish one in the south suburbs, tech training, but just on and on and on. AI, all of those kind of things just expose our young people and expose them to what the workforce really is. I had something at South Shore Cultural Center to talk about artificial intelligence, because we talk about that so much, and how do we prepare, you know, the students now for the jobs of now, but also the jobs of the future. The other thing is we need to lower the federal interest rate when people do borrow, and we need more. When my kids went to college, there was, we could borrow the money, and it was only $50 service fee, no interest or anything like that, and then we paid it back each month. It was in smaller increments. Thank God they had that, and in smaller increments. And then also a better way to let young people know all the scholarships that are out there. So many scholarships go unused, and people are not connected, so we need a better system for that. Thank you.
My last question before we move to closing statements. Thanks for sticking with us, and this has been a dense one. You know, kind of related to higher education, we have seen so many attacks on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just in universities, but pretty much across all sectors. Where do you stand on DEI and bringing more women, minorities into business, into education, and everywhere else where DEI is used? Representative Kelly.
Well, I don't have to tell you, this has been the most, I don't want to say the most racist president, but the most racist president I've ever been around, you know, in my lifetime, and just doing everything to destroy diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you're a business person, most people know diversity, equity, and inclusion is a good thing. It's a good thing for business. If you're selling your home, you don't want just one group looking at your home. You want everybody looking at your home. That's better for your bottom line in selling your home. We need to go back and pull apart everything that he's been doing. And also, we need to hold corporations responsible, because after George Floyd was killed, so many corporations said we were going to do this, we were going to do that, we were going to do the other around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I can tell you, as a member of Congress, we've seen them peel back. We've seen people lose their jobs, mostly black men and black women that are in these positions. Not that they weren't doing their job, but we've seen that. So we have to hold them accountable, because they're making money, you know, off of us, but then they're not hiring us. So, like, over 300,000 black women have lost their jobs, you know, in a very short period of time. So diversity, equity, and inclusion means everybody. It means everybody. That's the thing that people forget. But we need to claw back and reverse a lot of the things that he did, but we also need to make it better. It wasn't perfect before.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor.
When you were asking that question, I was reminded of how proud I was when Illinois became the first state in the nation under our administration to put an end to book bans. Because it's really important that we make sure that we tell the diverse stories and perspectives from our communities, and make sure especially that our children understand that what we are seeing right now is not new. We've been here before. And we have seen those upon whose shoulders we stand who have fought for equal justice under the law for all, and now we have a president that wants to roll back all of that progress. We know that these attacks on DEI are not about merit. These attacks on DEI are because he wants us to be a society where we point fingers at each other, where we blame each other. He wants us to be pitted against one another. And we need to be leaders in Washington right now that will call it out, speak out. And I can tell you here in Illinois, as I have demonstrated as a leader, I know that our diversity is our strength. And I will always make sure that I never abandon those values, and will fight through data-driven approaches to make sure that we continue to build the world that we want our children to inherit.
Thank you. With that, each of you will get 1 minute to make a closing statement. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you all for joining in this conversation to hear more about why I believe I'm the best person to represent you in the United States Senate. I can tell you that right now, as I travel the state, people aren't always bringing up a policy issue. What they say to me more than anything else in this particular moment in history is that I'm looking for a fighter. I'm looking for someone who's going to go to the mat fighting for me, because they see what's at stake coming out of Washington. And I came here to tell you that I will be that fighter, and I want to take your voices with me to D.C. My campaign platform is let's give the people what they want. And what have I heard the people want? They want higher wages. They want access to health care. They want corporate money out of politics. And that's exactly what I'm running on, and that's what I will fight for when I get to the Senate. I hope you'll join me. Go to JulianaStratton.com to join the team.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
Thank you all so much again. Thank you to the moderator. I am Robin Kelly, and I'm working very hard to be your next U.S. Senator. Donald Trump is trying to pit people against people, neighbor against neighbor, instead of holding millionaires, billionaires, and corporations more accountable. As I told you, I'm running on a platform of people over profits, and every day that I go to the U.S. Senate, I will work on accountability and work on affordability. If you want a workhorse, not a show horse, you want me. I'm not a big talker. I get things done. We can fight, but if you don't have accomplishments, I have accomplishments, experiences, and I have the relationships. I can hit the ground running. When I travel the state, people are concerned about affordability. People also don't want the race bought by anybody. So I will tell you that I'm unbought and unbossed. They want it to be fair, not people dumping in money or people trying to buy people to vote for them. That is, when we talk about corruption and accountability, that's very, very important. So as I said, I'm working really hard. I have a list of accomplishments. Please check the record, RobinForSenate.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our candidates for joining us and speaking on so many policy issues today. Thank you so much to you all for joining. Thank you to Rainbow Push and all of the wonderful organizations who have put this on. One final announcement. Could all the volunteers at this event please meet up at the front of the stage for a photo op? But thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your afternoon.